Hello, good morning, everyone. I think we are live. Great to see all of you in this morning. We have a very exciting session ahead of us, and we are super happy that so many of you joined. So we see the number of viewers increasing and increasing. We have already 52 people. I think there are always usually some late joiners. But I guess we start the session. Also, hi to the chat. Hi, Barrett. Hi, Kara. Hi, Liva. And yeah, Peter and I are super excited about today's session because we're going to talk about workations, one of our favorite topics. But we're going to talk about workations as an employee benefit without employer burn, as it says here on the slide, because today we're talking about no risk workations. So from the employer perspective, usually the biggest burden is the compliance risks. And today we're going to talk about how to completely eliminate them. And so this will be a very exciting session. And before we kick it off, I see like from the chat and the viewers, some people know us. So we also have some existing clients here, which is nice, but I think most of you don't know us yet. So let's start with a quick intro. Peter, do you want to kick off the intro? Tell us about yourself.
Yes, of course. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Pieter Manden. I'm Dutch. That's why my name Peter is written in a funny way. My background is I'm a tax lawyer. Used to work at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC for a long time, 13 years. First in the Netherlands and then afterwards in Germany. And my last role before I joined WorkMotion/WorkFlex, Patrick will share some more info on this later. I was the director responsible for the remote work proposition within PwC. So my specialty is around, well, the employer compliance when people temporarily or permanently work from abroad.
Perfect. Thanks, Peter. And what combines Peter and me is we are both the co-founders and managing directors of WorkFlex. So whereas Peter is the compliance expert, I manage our software and our client relationships. And from my background, I've built a lot of software products before, basically always trying to understand complex problems and trying to make them easier with software. And for those of you who don't know yet WorkFlex, we are a software-based company and we support clients in managing workations compliantly. And here in the middle of the screen, you can say WorkFlex a standalone business because previously we have been part of WorkMotion. WorkMotion supports companies in hiring remotely. And now we are also a standalone company because of all the success we had, and being a standalone company allows us to develop additional features to further mitigate the compliance risk, which we're going to talk later about, and further invest into our product. So really nice to see also that we have a very lively chat. This is amazing. And I would like to encourage you to also use it because obviously we have a little bit of a plan what we want to talk to you about, but you can also put in your comments and also questions so we can talk about it. So basically we are here to then talk about whatever interests you. Basically from today's session, we're gonna talk about no risk workations. We're gonna talk about our WorkFlex software proposition. And in general, as I see from the audience, some people who know us already, for example, existing clients, but a lot of people don't know us, it will be a very more general presentation. But we're gonna have two deep dives, mainly in our new product feature, which is like no risk. Peter will talk about this in a few minutes. And the second deep dive will be into the software. We're gonna show you how our WorkFlex proposition works. And I think that this we can get it started. And I would like to kick it off before we like deep dive into all the compliance topics, etc., to talk about workations as a benefit. Because I mean, now for the last 2 years, workations has really become a benefit, and more or less also a must-have benefit for larger organizations. And we also see here a recent study from McKinsey that workplace flexibility is the second most important benefit. And it comes directly after compensation. So back in the day, I still read a job description where they say free coffee or free fruits. Try to sell this as a benefit. Of course, that's nice to have, but why do people join specific companies or why do they leave? It's often because of other benefits, and workplace flexibility, and also including workations, is huge and is becoming more and more important. And when we deep dive into the different use cases for workations. So we as a company, we have supported more than 10,000 employees to go on vacation. So we have a lot of data. And what we usually see, the main primary use cases, employees go and like to extend their vacation. So I do this personally a lot. I go, for example, have a week in Spain as a vacation, then extend it by another week for a workation. So that's a primary use case. But we have a lot of employees who have an international background who like to visit their family abroad. So that's also why one of our top destinations we see is India. So many people who like live in Germany but like to visit their family abroad. And then we also have a smaller part who like live like a local, who just like want to go abroad for a few weeks and months. And also this very much explains also how long people go abroad. So often we talk about vacations, companies think, oh God, then my employees, they are abroad the entire year. They don't work in the home country anymore. They don't visit the office. This is usually not true. So usually when we talk about vacations, we're talking about a longer weekend, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. So the large majority of requests we see, they're like below 30 days. So this is very important to keep in mind, because later if we talk about compliance exposure and process, how to make it no risk, you first of all need to understand the user behavior. So these are the use cases and also the length of durations that we usually talk about. And to manage all of this, the biggest burden or thing they need to understand is compliance risks, but there are also a lot of processes behind it. So there are a lot of ways to solve it. Quickly about us, about our WorkFlex, for those who don't know us yet. We solve all of these management of compliance risks, processes, employee requests through a software. So WorkFlex is a software, and it completely eliminates the compliance risk and it automates all the different processes. So we have been in the market for more than a year. We support more than 100 companies, including Vodafone, including Scout24, Simon Kucher, Smart, involved with the car manufacturer. So a lot of big companies already trust us, and we manage their vacation requests. And those, so the existing clients that are here present, they're also used to our continuous upgrade in the platform, but also features. So one of the biggest updates we have so far is what we like to talk to you about today also, is how to completely eliminate the risks. And we call this feature no risk vacations. And Peter in a second will talk to you about, but quickly, where does no risk vacations fit in? I would like to explain how does WorkFlex work. And similar, like usually when we implement the software, clients, employees get access to a WorkFlex account, and then similar to like doing a vacation request, they can do a WorkFlex request or a workation request. So they would log into the platform. That's like step number one. They say, for example, I want to go to Spain for like 2 weeks, need to answer some questions, most of them compliance related. And then step number two, we initiate manager approval. So most companies would like their manager to approve this, because there needs to be a conversation around maybe a time zone difference, whether the employee needs to be in the office for clients or so. And then the third one, we analyze all the compliance risks. So we like to identify compliance risks before an employee goes abroad, so we can properly manage them. And then step number four, we implement a ton of mitigation measures, social security certificate, travel health insurance, etc. And then if we approve the case and the employee goes abroad, we manage the whole case, and we also take liability in case something does happen. So we had over 10,000 requests so far. We could always identify the risks before, so nothing ever happened. But in case something happens, we know there are like big fines. We do give liability to do so. And so I said there may be 2 deep dives in today's session. Now that you understand WorkFlex in general, we would like to deep dive first of all onto the no risk vacation. So what does this really mean that we offer, but also in general, what do companies need to look out for? And then afterwards, we also show you the software product that our clients use to do this. And whenever you have any other questions, so it can also be related to other topics that you would like to know, you can use the chat. ask us anything that you'd like, and we'd be happy to answer this. But with this, Pieter, is it okay if I hand it over to you and we deep dive into the no risk vacation concept?
Yes, absolutely. So indeed, if there's any questions, just put them in the chat. Super eager to see what's keeping you awake at night. So the why, the what, and the how of no risk workations. Yeah, let's go to the first next slide right away, Patrick. Yes, exactly. Perfectly. So why did we come up with this new, and I think it's pretty cool, groundbreaking concept of no risk workations? There's three reasons for it. And you can see them on the screen here. So it's certainty, responsibility, and functionality. Patrick already explained a little bit how WorkFlex works, and the core of what we deliver is this risk assessment, and it has three risk qualifications: low, medium, and high. Low, clients have no problem with at all. They'll usually allow them. High, it's also pretty clear. Clients will usually not approve these requests. But the problem was always in the middle, right? What do we do with medium risk qualifications? And that's difficult, right? Do you allow them? Do you do something more? Do you reject them? Clients were struggling with that type of certainty. So what do we do with these medium cases? Then the second one is responsibility. So assuming everything goes well, that's great, right? But of course, you need to brace in life for, let's say, not so cool things to happen. And that's what clients asked us a lot. So what if now something happens despite a low risk or maybe a medium risk that we approved? So that's a problem that clients were telling us about, and a very valid issue they had. And the last one is functionality. Patrick already mentioned it. We're not very old as a company, and we just like to continuously develop our proposition and our product. So we've learned from the experiences, and we are now adapting our solution accordingly. So this is why we have no risk workations, and we can go to the next slide, Patrick. Thank you. Before we go through the what, and there's three pillars, maybe very quick summary of the compliance risks that we're actually talking about. I guess, so I've seen some names that I know are 100% clear about the risks related to workations, but there's maybe also a couple of people here that are a little bit newer to this topic. So a quick summary of the compliance topics that we talk about when we're dealing with workations, or people simply working from abroad for a limited period of time. So there's five. And the first one is usually the most important one for companies. It's corporate tax. It's whether a workationer constitutes a so-called permanent establishment. It's the biggest problem usually for clients because you don't want a workationer to constitute a PE. It's a very big problem. That's the bad news. The good news is there's no permanent and temporary work from abroad. So if you manage it well, for instance, with WorkFlex, then you should be able to mitigate this risk pretty well in practice. But that's the first one, corporate tax. The second one is employment tax. Basically, the obligation that you as an employer would have to set up a payroll in the destination country, which you also don't want. I don't think it's as big as a problem as having a permanent establishment there, but you also don't want to set up a payroll for, I don't know, Patrick in Spain, because he's already on a payroll in Germany. So why would we want to do this? So that would be the second risk, employment tax. The third one is social security. It's related because, of course, you pay your social security premiums usually through the payroll, but it's also a little bit separate. So the social security risk related to workations is, on the one hand, the risk that an individual would drop out of the social security system of the home country. And second, that as a result, or maybe even standalone, the individual, the workationer, becomes covered, mandatory, by the social security scheme in the destination country, which would trigger the obligation to pay premiums there. So you don't want this because the individual should just remain insured in the home country and you don't want to change it. So that's the third risk, social security. The fourth one is a labor law. And that's the question if local labor law, for instance, in Spain, becomes applicable. You don't want this because the employee is covered by German or Dutch or whatever the home country is, labor law, and you don't need local labor law to become applicable because you don't know that local labor law, you don't know what it would entail in this specific situation. And then the last one is visa or immigration, and that's basically a right to work. The workationer can, of course, only be and work in Spain if he or she has a valid working title. Within the EU, as you know, that's not a big issue, but outside of the EU, it can definitely be a bigger issue. And by the way, we see, of course, in Germany and the Netherlands, where I'm from, a lot of employers with a very international workforce who are not all EU citizens. And also for them, just traveling within EU and workationing around in Spain or in Italy can already be a problem from this immigration perspective. So that's the fifth risk. And that's just a quick summary of the compliance topics.
Peter, I have a question here. So I do understand the 5 risks, but for those who don't have a legal background or so, what is the worst case scenario that can happen to a company if those risks are not identified before and managed accordingly? So what's the worst case scenario?
Yeah. So I need to differentiate in 2 things. So the worst case, for instance, for this last risk, visa immigration, no right to work, that would actually mean that there's illegal labor. Patrick, we can hear you typing. There's illegal labor, and illegal labor is really, of course, it was never meant for workationing around and becoming an illegal working immigrant, basically. The rules were not written for this situation, but it's actually what it would be. And that's, of course, a very big problem. You don't want to be someone who enables illegal labor. Fines are extremely high and penalties are very, very high, both for the employer as well as for the individual. So that's one. I know it's a little bit far-fetched, but that would be an absolute worst-case scenario for the visa and immigration part. And for the other risk dimensions, so for the payroll topic, for permanent establishment, for labor law, and for social security, I think the worst-case scenario is that despite having all of this in Germany, so being socially insured in Germany, being employed under German labor law, having corporate taxes in Germany only, despite all of this, triggering the obligations for these risk dimensions in the destination country. So all of a sudden, there's a PE. If you have a PE, you also need a payroll. If you're paying payroll taxes, probably you would also have to go and start contributing social security premiums. That's when, well, let's not use the words that I was going to use. That's when you've got a really big problem. That's absolutely a worst case scenario for the other risk dimensions besides visa immigration. All right, so now this is like the bad picture. How do we solve this problem? Well, we solve it through no risk workations, and there's 3 pillars. And the first one you can already see here. Probably you've had so much time that you could also read the text by now. What we always do is we identify the risk drivers, and we do this on an individual basis. Of course, it's much easier to say in your policy, we do 30 days within the EU for everyone. But that's not how compliance rules work. If that anyone is not an EU citizen, those 30 days within the EU might already pose a problem. And also if that anyone happens to be the CEO closing important deals or making important decisions during the stay abroad, those 30 days might already be a little bit too long. And if that anyone has a very strong connection to the destination country, that is also an issue, maybe already for below 30 days. So that's why we always identify the risk drivers on an individual basis. That's also where technology comes in, right? Because if you have to do this on an individual basis, it might be a lot of work. So that's where it starts. We have this individualized questionnaire, and that helps us to assess each case individually. So that's one. The second one is if we know what we're talking about, then we can actually take risk mitigating measures. If you go to the next slide, Patrick. Thank you. We implement various risk mitigation measures. You see a couple of them here in a smaller text. For social security, for instance, an A1 or a COC certificate. We apply for it if it's possible. We get travel health insurance. I know many employers just ask their employees to get this travel health insurance on their own, but it's better to have it through the employer or through WorkFlex, because theoretically, a professional accident can still happen during the workation, and the employee or the insurance company can say, I do have a private travel insurance, but it's not applicable. It was a professional accident, remember? So that's why also as an employer, we always recommend to have a travel insurance of your own. And we will get you one through WorkFlex. Then we've got employee instructions to make sure that particular activities are not performed, or at least not performed too often. And we've also got a very cool new feature, which we'll dive into a little bit more in depth later. It's the WorkFlex Social Security Statement. It's all types of risk mitigation measures that we take to make sure that, okay, there's always a little bit of risk, but through these measures, we try to mitigate them as good as possible. Maybe just as a last example, what we, of course, always do in the process of a WorkFlex request is that the employee accepts the policy, and we don't create a full addendum to the employment contract, but we have got a perfect audit trail that you can also show to the authorities or to the employee if something happens and say, hey, we did everything we can as an employer to make this work and to make this work safely and compliantly. So that's also simply just a measure. Having an audit trail in place through WorkFlex mitigates the risk all by itself. And then the last one, and that's really the one that we're adding to the game now, that is that we will accept responsibility if any risk materializes. So there was a low risk assessment, you've allowed it, but still something happens, we will take a responsibility. And that responsibility is threefold. And maybe just quickly, a risk materializing. What is a risk materializing? Of course, a risk materializing very clearly would be, there is a PE. You'd have to go and register as a business and pay corporate taxes locally. But we consider a risk materializing already something much, much broader. You can see that here under one. Professional support during discussions with the authorities. A compliance risk during workations doesn't just pop up all of itself, right? There will be discussions with the authorities. Customs start asking questions, or an employee receives questions from whatever type of local official. That's when the risk already materializes for us. You don't really have a problem at all yet. The employee doesn't have a problem at all yet, but still we will dive in and say, hey, we're in this together. We will support you with every question that you get. And we are trained tax and legal professionals, of course, so hopefully we should be able to answer the questions more accurately, quicker, and just more to the satisfaction of the official, so that we make sure that we'll never even get to a true compliance exposure. We'll be there by your side basically right away. That's the first part. And I think that's, it's not even an official risk materializing, but it's already a cool sign and a very important part of the no risk workations concept. The second one is a little bit more official. We take responsibility for the correctness of our risk assessments. Simple, a legal liability. We are legal and tax advisors, and that's why we take the liability for the correctness of our risk assessment. So if anything's wrong, and as a result of this, there is a compliance exposure, we will have to take the liability and responsibility for this. And the last one is financial liability. We're pretty confident, even if the risk assessment is not incorrect and still something happens, we will take a responsibility for this. Of course, we'll still join you in the discussions with the authorities, etc. But we will also take a financial liability on our own, saying if you have to pay taxes locally or social security contributions, we will pick up that bill for you. I see a question coming in. Yvonne, thank you very much. Depending on the destination, there may also be country-specific rules who owns the IP. do your risk assessment cover this as well? That's a good question. And the answer is no. I think that data/IP are indeed relevant when working from abroad, but it's not something that we cover in our risk assessments. For two key reasons. The first one is data specific is very much related to the client contracts that our clients have with their clients. For instance, saying we are a consulting company for you and we only process your data within the EU, and we don't know what's exactly in those contracts, so that's difficult. And the IP part, and that's the second reason, is for me this is covered by labor law. And what we try to do is make sure that home country labor law remains applicable. So what you have in your employment contract remains applicable. Hopefully in your employment contract, you've arranged things around IP. And if you have, then the combination of WorkFlex and your contract should protect you from this IP risk. But I'm not aware exactly of the content of your employment contract. So that's why we struggle a little bit with including this as a separate risk dimension, how we call it. But it's a good question. I think this is more a problem if you are permanently hiring from abroad compared to if someone's only working from abroad for a couple of, let's say, weeks or months. Another question coming in. Thank you for this. Katarzyna, you mentioned you care for A1 certificates, health insurance. What about immigration matters? Working visa, exactly. Yeah, very good question. With WorkFlex, we offer a benefit, not an employer burden. What this means is that as soon as the employee requires an official working permit to be able to work from somewhere for 2 weeks or so, we will consider it a high risk. And basically, we recommend clients to reject that request. Why is this? Because, hey, this is an employer burden. Obtaining a working permit is a lot of work. It's costly, and it usually implies that you as an employer also take a considerable responsibility for the employee in the destination country. But that's not the game of workations. The game of workations is we wish you a lot of fun abroad. It's your decision. It's not our responsibility. We take responsibility to a certain extent as your employer, but it is mainly an employee thing. So no, we don't do working visa. That's the bad news. The good news is there are a lot of possibilities for temporary work from abroad without visas. We have obtained confirmations from authorities all around the world in many countries, of course, especially the key destination countries, where we asked those authorities, do we agree that workationers are business travelers? And all of them said yes. And that means that if there is a business travel so-called visa waiver program, workationers can go to that country. For instance, the US, as a EU citizen, you can go to the US. You, of course, need your ESTA. Everyone needs this, but you don't need a specific business travel visa. And that makes it easy. So you can simply say as an employer, yeah, go ahead for 90 days or whatever the number is. I think it's 90 days in the US specifically. You can workation around in California or where you're going. So there's a lot of possibilities even without the working permits. And that's what we try to manage with WorkFlex.
And also, Peter, to highlight, also related to this question. So we talk a lot about these risks, and they're real in some of the cases, and we need to be aware of them. But the good news is, in the large majority of cases, we can allow the workation. So we see on our platform, usually over 90% of all workation requests are accepted. So it's a good news. It's more than 90%. So it's the large majority. The bad news is, even sometimes we're not able to change regulations and laws. So we recommend not to allow a vacation and then tell the employee, okay, go to this destination, but please take a vacation and not a vacation.
Yeah, exactly. We can't do magic. And what we do see with clients is that they're then happy, right? That they have to disappoint an employee, and nobody likes this, but it's always better to say, well, sorry, computer or WorkFlex says no, rather than you as the HR specialist or GM specialist or your role saying, nah, we're just not going to allow it for you, because the employee will feel like but for my neighbor here across the hallway, everything was allowed. And how is this different? So that's also, I think, a good feature of WorkFlex. Emmanuel has a question, thank you for this, about requesting sick leave from abroad. How would it work getting a medical certificate that could be recognized in the country of employment? For example, someone gets ill in India, gets a local medical certificate and cannot be recognized and accepted in Germany. Very good point. There's very different processes for sick leave. Just as an example, worked in Germany for a couple of years, you need your Zettel, right? You need your note from the doctor telling everybody you're sick. In the Netherlands, where I'm now working from, we don't know this system at all. Nobody goes to the doctor to get a little bit of a note and show the employer. You just call up your employer and it's not all good because you're sick, but nobody will ask for evidence. So that's already the starting point, Emmanuel. There's very different processes, and that makes it a little bit difficult. If you are a German employer and as a result you require a note, this will require the employee to go to the doctor in, for instance, India. If that doctor then will not provide evidence of sickness because they say, but this is not common in our country at all, and I'm just not gonna call anyone in sick, or maybe that note is not recognized, as you say, can't really do magic, then apparently the employee is not considered sick, and you might have a discussion on this. I think this can also happen in Germany. The employee saying, but I'm sick, and not receiving a note, you would have the similar discussion, of course.
And also to add to this problem, this problem is not very new, right? You also have it with business travel. So there were before also people going on business travel to India and then getting sick and requiring a sick notice. So there are processes in place. And a lot of these things can also happen while you're on workation. Something that we also do is then offer full employee support. So we get like questions like this all the time, which we then support. In the very large majority of cases, how it was then solved is also that the doctor then in Germany, even after the vacation, was able to then issue this the sick notice.
Yeah. We've seen, I think now out of the 10,000 workations that we enabled, 2 cases where there were actually medical costs incurred. And for this, of course, you can use the travel health insurance for processes around being recognized and receiving a note. That's simply sometimes difficult, but that is not something new, and I don't think it's something that you as an employer can fully control. And also think about what would actually be the damage in this case. Of course, you can always still talk with the employee, and if something's really wrong, you've got your insurance, or we've got your insurance, and you've got all of the statements with the employee in the portal, so that should cover it. But going to the doctor, etc., those are sometimes things that are difficult depending on where the individual's actually working from.
Yeah, Peter, to sum this up, so this low risk vacations concept, so we talked a lot about it, and there have been more comments. From my perspective, 3 things that we learned. So Peter talked about this no risk vacation. It's a very unique and very new concept. So we're the only ones that provide it. And this only allows us to do this because like the first and the second pillar are so strong, because ideally you don't want to have a place where you have a compliance risk. We ideally identify the risks before, and only because we're so good in identifying the risks before, and only because of our risk mitigation measures, we're actually able to do this. So now that we have these in place, like all 3 pillars, it really doesn't give employers any more excuses to not allow vacations for compliance reasons, because this is exactly what we saw like 1 or 2 years ago. A lot of employers were forbidding vacations for compliance reasons. So of course, for some employees, it doesn't make sense because of the culture, etc. So that's another reason that makes sense. But for compliance reasons, there shouldn't be any now more excuse to not allow it. And actually, Peter, I see one more question popping up before we then go to the next one. It's from Atze.
Yeah, very good question, Atze. Thank you. It's on PE, and just so it's quite technical, but it says, but if we are, let's say, a global company and we have already an entity in Spain, and now we have a workationer going from Germany to Spain, does that have an impact? Yes and no. It's something that WorkFlex also assesses. And why yes and no? it depends fully on for the benefit of which entity the employee is working. Is the employee working for the German company and goes on a workation to Spain, but continues to work for the German company and has no business relevance in Spain? Of course not, because it's not a business trip, it's a workation. Then that entity has no impact. It gets a lot more complex very quickly if the employee is working partially for the benefit of the Spanish entity, or concluding contracts in Spain for whatever entity. And that's, as I said, it's something that we also check under this first risk dimension of PE. So usually, to summarize, it should not have an impact, and you just do your regular PE check always, regardless of a local entity. But if a couple of questions are answered wrongly, then it gets a lot more complicated suddenly, and you do have to account for this local PE in your assessment. Right, next slide. Yeah, so how does this work? We already said, right? WorkFlex provides a risk assessment, and it has a low, medium, or high risk. High risk, it's pretty simple. It will likely trigger some kind of an employer burden in the local country, and we don't want this. We want to offer a benefit without the burden, so we recommend to either reject it or just look into this. If it's really important, then look into it separately and take really individualized measures. For the other cases, low risk or medium risk, that's where now our no risk workations coverage will apply. And you can see the little stamp here, both in green and in medium in orange. And that says, okay, we've got you covered. So if a discussion pops up, we're there for you. There's legal liability for the correctness of this risk assessment. And even if something goes wrong without the risk assessment being incorrect, we will take the financial liability for you. So it's very simple. For low risk and medium risk assessments, the no risk workations applies. If you see this stamp on the risk assessment, you know you're covered. Next slide. Exactly, because this is a pretty cool, at least, well, I'm a little bit of a tax and legal nerd, of course, so that's why this makes me very exciting, and I wanted just to share it with you. Hopefully there's a couple of other Social Security nerds on this webinar. Welcome. It's an important part of the no risk workations concept, and this is this WorkFlex Social Security statement. There's a very big problem with A1s and COCs. If you know it, you know it. Requesting them takes a long time. Maybe not in Germany, but in the Netherlands here, for instance, 8 weeks easily, usually even a lot longer. In the UK, we're not talking weeks, we're talking months, because everything's on paper. So it takes ages, really. It's very error sensitive, because that is the case in Germany. Just missing one Buchstabe, just one number or one letter, it's going to lead to an error and you will not get your A1. And sometimes, and that's the third problem we have with A1, sometimes it's just even impossible. In Spain, you would have to have a local registration, and you would just not be able to get one as a Dutch employer or a German employer. You cannot do it on your own. So it's simply impossible. So it's much easier to say, oh, we need A1s and COCs, than actually doing it. Now, at WorkFlex, we do it in a lot of countries. So Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, the UK, although it takes ages, but we do it in a lot of countries, and we will continue to do this, and we will continue to extend the countries where we are able to request A1s from. But what we will also do as from now, and as part of the no risk workations concept, is we've designed our very own social security certificate. Of course, we're not so arrogant that we think that's an official statement. It is not. But the content is exactly the same to an A1 or a COC. It says, Patrick is going to Spain, but we've assessed the case. Premiums are continued to be paid in Germany for him. He's only in Spain for a short time. We've looked at the Social Security treaty that is in place. And based on that assessment, we feel that he should remain covered by the German Social Security scheme and covered by that Social Security scheme only. So that's what the Social Security statement WorkFlex says. The content is exactly the same as an A1 or a COC, but there are a couple of advantages to it. First, it's immediately available. You won't have to wait 8 weeks, 3 months, or until eternity to get it. It will be available on the WorkFlex platform upon approval of the request immediately. It will be there for all eligible requests. So as soon as there's a Social Security treaty in place, regardless the home country, you will see a WorkFlex Social Security statement there. There's even one if there's no Social Security treaty in place, but the content of the statement is a little bit different. As you can imagine, if you have questions on this, you know where to find me. So although this is not an official document, we are confident that it's likely to comfort authorities, showing that you have done an assessment and that you have come to a particular conclusion around Patrick's Social Security status. And even if it might not be enough for the authorities to fully believe you, we believe in it. That's what we said, right? We take the legal liability and even the financial liability if, despite this WorkFlex Social Security statement, a Social Security risk would arise in the destination country. So you can see it as a very small example. For all no-risk workations that are approved, this WorkFlex Social Security statement is, I think, the best alternative to a true A1 or COC, which we will still request, but yeah, it might only be there after the workation is done. Then at least there's this WorkFlex Social Security statement available for the employee. So I think that's a really cool feature of our new concept, and hopefully one that works well for you too, knowing that A1s and COCs are sometimes just really, really difficult. I think that brings us to the summary for the no-risk workations. Exactly. Patrick already said it, right? So what we try to achieve with this concept of individual risk assessments, a lot of risk mitigation measures, and this responsibility that we take as WorkFlex for low and medium risk qualified WorkFlex requests is that we try to protect you as good as possible to the compliance risks and enable you to, let's say, allow workations in a true benefit manner with more possibilities in terms of duration and in terms of destination. And with that being said, I don't see any new questions. I think, Patrick, we can go over to the product demo.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Peter. This is super exciting, and our platform and our services are getting better and better. And also for those like the existing clients, all existing clients who have trip handling with us, we also get this for free. So it's a free upgrade. Our clients are used to that service always getting better and better. And for all people who are interested in this, I will show you now the product, how it actually works, but then you can also free to book a call with us, because we know for every company it's a little bit different. So we can consult you on this. So as WorkFlex, I mean, for vocations, the biggest burden is the compliance risk. So we talked about it a lot. It's definitely the core of our services. But on top of this, we make it very, very easy for employers then to deal with it, because we have all the processes, everything automated through a software. So ultimately, we are a software-based company, and this also makes us different than from lawyers, etc., who still have very manual processes in place. They're very costly and take a lot of time. And you can continue asking questions, but I would like to spend around like 5 to 10 minutes just quickly showing the software. So I won't have enough time to show you everything, but that you get a glimpse on how easy it actually is. And then Peter will round it off. So before I jump into the product demo, and usually in companies, there are always 3 stakeholders that need to be considered. So you guessed it, the most important one is the employee. So the employee is actually receiving this benefit and going on a vacation. The second one is usually the manager of the employee who needs to approve the case, the request. And then thirdly, it's HR or global mobility departments who then need to manage the risks and an overview of all of those. And I will show you all 3 of those. And all 3 of them will get access to WorkFlex. And I start with the employee. So now you should see the platform, how it would look like from an employee perspective. So I'm right now in our demo account. I'm registered as an employee as Patrick. And when I was invited to the platform and when I registered, I already typed in some of my information. So the platform already knows my name, my gender, date of birth, etc., place of birth. A lot of details are then later on relevant for the assessment of our risks, but also then for us to apply for the insurance, etc. And then based on this, WorkFlex already automatically creates a dashboard and tells me where I can likely go to. So for me, I'm a German citizen, and for me, it's very easy to travel to other European countries and to go on a vacation. So I see a lot of places are possible. I think also some places are unlikely possible currently, also in Europe because of the current situation. So it obviously changes from time to time. But this dashboard looks different for every single employee. And I can request a vacation within Europe, but also outside Europe. And I want to do a quick example. And we see in our platform, one of the most popular destinations in Europe is Spain. So people love going on vacations in Spain. So let's say I want to go to Spain for around 1 week in March. I can type this in. And then WorkFlex automatically calculates the number of working days, which is very important because the number of working days has a compliance impact, but also a lot of companies, for example, have a policy in place that only allow 20, 30, or 60 days. So in the background, every employee has a day budget that we always keep up to date. So for me, if I go like 1 week or like 6 days, this is taken off my budget. Then, although WorkFlex already knows some stuff about myself, I need to give additional information about this trip, which then later on has an impact on my compliance assessment. So it's asking me, am I planning to negotiate, conclude contracts on behalf of the company, which this week will be a no. And it's asking me where I'm going to be working from. So in my case, I'm planning to work from an Airbnb. Other options, for example, from a co-working space or office can have, again, a different compliance exposure. That's why we are asking this. And I'm not visiting my partner, spouse, or children. I also do not file taxes in Spain. I don't have a bank account in Spain. And although we already know I'm gonna be spending a week or 6 working days in Spain, I might have been there before on holidays or for leisure trips. So WorkFlex, we from day one don't have all the information. It's also asking me if I have been there before. So in my case, I have been in Spain actually in the last 12 months for around 20 days. So I'm typing this in, and with this just taking me a minute now, I can submit my request. So easy as that. Literally, as an employee, super nice experience. Make it very, very easy. And the request is in. And then kind of the next steps depend on the companies. Every company is different, but we see around 80 to 90% of the companies it's always the same. So usually now a notification will be sent to my manager who needs to approve the case. We will then identify all the risk drivers. And then once HR approves, who's mostly or in most cases the final approval person, then this case is accepted. So currently I see it is in progress. It's waiting for manager approval that is pending and HR approval. And then later on, I also see all these required documents. So that's as easy as it gets from an employee perspective. I think it's always interesting to see how does it look like from the admin perspective. So let me change my view. And we like it if life is easy, if life is simple. So the admin dashboard looks very similar. But however, with the big difference that as an admin, you obviously can see all the different requests. So you can see now the request from me, Patrick, is popping up to Spain. It's currently in progress. I can also take a look at the submission, at all the details, etc., and also showing previous cases. And we can also take a look. So for example, here, someone got from Germany to India, was approved under the no risk concept. And we also see then for all the risk mitigation measures. So we send out employee instruction, the WorkFlex social security statement that Peter talked about, the insurance certificate, and the A1, or like in this case, it's a COC that was implemented. I also see, by the way, one question that's popping up from Daniel, which is very nice. I would say quickly postpone this. Maybe Peter, you can take this question like after I've shown the demo, and then we round it off. And also, if anyone else has questions, also to compliance, I'm not the software, please ask it, and then we pick it up. So that's how it looks like from an admin perspective. Obviously, you can manage all your people and the platform. And where we also help companies is on setting the company policy. And you can also do the settings then within WorkFlex. So if you think about the company policy, I mean, we supported more than 100 companies already with it. And usually the company policies are always the same, except for 2 triggers. And the first one is the maximum number of days. So although from a compliance perspective, in theory, up to 183 days is possible, some companies, because of the company culture and hybrid office, they would like to restrict it. So in real life, we often see a policy of around 30 days, sometimes 60 days, etc. So this is based on your company culture. So you can set this. And then the second trigger is the whitelisted countries. So we see 3 different policies in the market. We as WorkFlex use the entire world, but a lot of companies only use EU countries, or some companies say EU countries plus, for example, the origin countries. So, for example, an Indian is working in Germany, this person can then WorkFlex around the EU and its origin country, in this case, then India. But you can also set your own terms. And then lastly, as with all services, right, there are terms and conditions. So we always have a long template that also then specifies some of the details. We usually see that across all companies, they are very much similar. So most companies just pick our standard template that we prepared in detail. Yes, that's the platform. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that I don't need to go into all the details now, but I think it really shows like this whole complexity of workations and managing it. We make it very, very easy. All the processes are automated, and we have all the compliance know-how in the platform. There's one question popping up by Leah. So Leah's asking whether I can show the insurance certificate. Yes, we have it here. This is the demo account, so we did not actually purchase the insurance for the demo. But actually, when an employee goes abroad, we purchase insurance based on the destination country, based on the individual, essentially the right insurance is in place. And then we upload also a confirmation. So this is then proof. There's also a number in case something happens, etc. Oh, and I also like this question by Yvonne. Is there integration added to Personio? Well, not yet, but this is on our product roadmap, and we have it available in a few weeks. So this is coming out very soon, that we have an integration to Personio. Also, we're working on an integration with SAP. We have a partnership in place and many others to then even make it easier. I see 2 or 3 questions popping up. Does the platform recognize if I've already been to the country in the last 12 months? Yeah, so yes and no, right? So obviously we take a look at all the data that we have from the employees. So if there has been previous WorkFlex requests, we look at this data, but often from day one, we don't have this data. And also sometimes the employee might have been in the destination country for leisure. And that's why we asked, this was the very last question, we asked how many days have you been already abroad in the last 12 months? Then another question, how much does it cost? Yeah, so the costs depend on 2 factors. It depends on the company size, so how big is your company, and it also depends on the volume, so how many people are actually going on workations. So I can't like tell a general price. I think for this it makes sense, like if you book a meeting with us, which you can do on our website, which I'm posting here right now. Just book a meeting, 30 minutes or so, and we can tell you the price for your company. Last 2 questions. So Jenny asked, are we an American company? No, we are not. We are actually a Dutch company. And previously we have been a German company. Now we moved to the Dutch, which actually allows us to offer this no risk vacation concept. Lastly, Andrea, do we work with consultants? Arbeiten Sie mit anderen Beratern zusammen, die WorkFlex das an Ihre eigenen Mandanten weiterempfehlen und weitergeben können? Yes, we do. We have a lot of partners. So we're a software-based company. We consult a lot of companies on workations, but we also work together with other HR consultancies, then do additional consultancy. And we also have a lot of HR consultancies who then refer us. We then can implement something together. So please reach out to me if this is interesting. You want to get more infos. Hi Bob is also on the product roadmap. Please reach out. We always prioritize it based on client demand. And then one other question from Manuela. Is this a free update? Yes, Manuela, this is a free upgrade for all clients who have trip handling with us, which is the very large majority of clients. So please reach out and we will upgrade you to the new low-risk vacation concept for free. Bamboo HR is also on the roadmap. Yes, we will try to support as many as possible. So Bamboo, Personio, SAP, hi Bob, it's on the roadmap. Personio and SAP will be out there first, and the others will follow shortly. So I see a lot of questions popping up, which is very nice. So it always depends a bit by the company. So feel free to go to our website, and then we can book a meeting, and then we discuss your situations a little bit more in detail. It doesn't cost anything. We're always happy to give some advice. But with this, and to make sure that we finish on time, we want to be respectful. Peter, I would like to, maybe you can finish it off. And I also know that while this webinar has been very exciting, we have more exciting webinars coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, if you can go back to the slide, so I can in the meantime answer Daniel's question. Really good one. Of course, it's a little bit of an extensive one, Daniel. So if this answer doesn't suffice, then please book a meeting, and I'd love to talk to you more in depth about it. But the thing is, what's the interaction? Of course, maybe you missed that part. We take liability already starts with, if there's not even a problem, really, just a discussion. So as soon as there's a discussion, local customs asking questions, or a local authority raising topics, or maybe even within the company, you saying, well, the individual said there's no contracts being concluded, but now it is possible. We are supposed to be informed right away. We would like to be informed right away so that we can actually take the responsibility that we want to. And that starts with just giving you advice. We're tax and legal specialists, so we can tell you, ooh, this would increase the risk, so better not do it. Or this is for now okay. We can even engage local specialists if it's required. So that's already where it starts. And then legal liability and a financial responsibility would even follow this. Let's say we're there for you 24/7 if any questions arise. You just have to contact us through support@workflex.com. So it is that simple. Again, if this doesn't suffice, then please let me know. Book a meeting. Would love to hear your feedback here too. Yeah, and then to close this off, you are not alone in this topic of trying to compliantly manage workations and try to figure out what a good policy is and what is not, and what other companies are doing. So that's why WorkFlex, together with the Workation Alliance, is actually something that I started myself, are organizing a webinar. The Workation Alliance is basically a collaboration of a large group of very, let's say, large and leading employers in, I think it's now 6 countries plus: Germany, Austria, the Scandinavian countries, the Netherlands, etc. Leading employers, you can see a couple of names here on the slide. So Bosch, Allianz are just examples. SAP, Lufthansa are also part of it. So really, really cool leading names. And we exchange experiences in a smaller round, but we would like to share those experiences also with a broader audience. And this we do in this webinar on the 2nd of March. So it's in 2 weeks from now, where we have guest speakers from Bosch, from Daniel Zinner, the Clevis partner, also very active within the DGFP, and from Allianz to also share their experiences of how do we allow workations, how do we try to manage this through a technology or a process, and how do we handle the compliance. So if you can't get enough of this, please sign up for this webinar too. It's free, of course, and then we would like to see you there. For now, also on behalf of Patrick, thank you very much for being here. We had a very high number of participants. Makes us always very happy. Great to see the interaction with all the questions. So thank you again for being here. If there's anything that we can help you with after this, book a meeting or send us an email, and then we'll close it off for now. Thank you and goodbye.